The notification chimed at 11:47 p.m., and I knew my marriage was finished. Not because of what the message said, I hadn't even read it yet, but because my wife Vanessa was supposedly at her book club, and the iPad sitting on our kitchen counter had just lit up with a text from someone named D that started with, "Can't wait to feel you again tomorrow." I'm Miles Harren, 42 years old, systems analyst for a mid-tier tech company in suburban Connecticut. I fix problems for a living. Networks, databases, security protocols, the kind of invisible infrastructure that keeps modern life running smoothly. What I don't fix, apparently, is marriages. The house around me felt different now, like walking through a crime scene. Every carefully chosen piece of furniture, every family photo on the mantel, every repair I'd made with my own hands over the past 15 years, all of it suddenly looked like evidence of something that had already ended without my knowledge. Our split-level colonial sat on Maple Ridge Drive, one of those tree-lined streets where neighbors still waved from their driveways and kids rode bikes without helmets. The American dream in vinyl siding and two-car garages. I'd replaced the roof 3 summers ago, installed a new HVAC system last winter, and spent countless weekends maintaining the illusion of domestic perfection. Vanessa worked in human resources for a regional insurance company, the kind of job that required her to attend networking events and professional development seminars. At least, that's what I'd been told. She was 39, still attractive in that polished suburban way, with highlighted hair and a gym membership she actually used. We'd met in college, married at 25, had our son Eli 2 years later. Eli was 14 now, a quiet kid who preferred video games to sports and had inherited my tendency toward sarcasm. He was upstairs in his room, probably still awake despite the late hour, headphones on, lost in whatever digital world offered more excitement than our quiet neighborhood. I picked up the iPad with steady hands. The message thread with D stretched back weeks, months, actually. The timestamps told a story I wasn't ready to read, but couldn't ignore. "Thursday can't come fast enough. Mike's working late again. Your place or mine? I can get away around 2. Last night was incredible. I keep thinking about your hands." The messages weren't explicit enough to be pornographic, but they painted a clear picture. My wife had been having an affair, and she'd been careless enough to let the evidence accumulate on our shared device. I scrolled through more messages, my analytical mind automatically cataloging patterns, late-night clusters of texts, identical gaps in communication that corresponded to my business trips, mirrored response times that suggested real-time conversations happening while I was in the next room. The front door opened downstairs, and I heard Vanessa's keychain jingling against the ceramic bowl where we kept loose change. Her footsteps crossed the hardwood floor of the entryway. "Miles, you still up?" I closed the iPad and slid it back to its original position. "Just finishing some work." She appeared in the kitchen doorway, still wearing her book club outfit, dark jeans, cream-colored sweater, the expensive boots I'd bought her for Christmas. Her makeup was perfect, not a hair out of place. Either her book club had exceptional lighting, or she'd freshened up somewhere else. "How was the discussion tonight?" I asked. "Oh, you know how it is." Jennifer dominated the conversation again. We barely got through chapter 12. She moved toward the refrigerator, avoiding eye contact. "I'm exhausted. Long day. What book are you reading this month?" She paused, hand on the refrigerator door. The one about the woman in Paris, historical fiction. You wouldn't like it." I nodded slowly. Vanessa had been in the same book club for 3 years. I'd never heard her mention anyone named Jennifer, and she'd never been vague about what they were reading. She used to tell me detailed summaries, complete with her opinions about plot holes and character development. "I'm going to bed," she said. "Don't stay up too late." "I'll be right up." But I wouldn't be. I had work to do. After her footsteps faded upstairs, I reopened the iPad and started taking screenshots. Not of the message content. I wasn't interested in reading the intimate details of my wife's betrayal. Instead, I documented the metadata: timestamps, frequency patterns, response intervals, the digital fingerprint of deception. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thought you should see this. She's been lying to both of us." Attached was a screenshot of a conversation between Vanessa and someone else. The contact name was Mara, Vanessa's friend from work. "Derek's getting suspicious. Thinks Mike might know something." "How could he know?" "You've been careful. Derek says Mike's been asking weird questions about my schedule. Maybe it's time to just tell him. Rip the Band-Aid off. I'm not ready. Derek wants me to wait until after his promotion comes through." I stared at the screen. Derek. So, D had a name now. And apparently, someone was feeding me information about my own wife's affair. Another message from the unknown number. "Derek Lane. Works at Pinnacle Solutions downtown. Drives a red BMW. Thought you deserved to know." I sat back in my chair, processing this development. Someone, presumably Derek himself, was exposing the affair to me. But why? What kind of man sleeps with another man's wife, then sends evidence to the husband? The answer came in another message. "She told me you two were separated. Said you'd been living like roommates for months. When I found out she was lying, I figured you had a right to know." I almost laughed. Vanessa had been running a con on both of us. She'd convinced Derek that our marriage was already over, probably to ease his conscience about the affair. Now Derek was having second thoughts, and I was getting the benefit of his guilty conscience. But something felt wrong about the timing. Too convenient. Too clean. I spent the next hour researching Derek Lane online. LinkedIn profile showed he was 45, divorced, worked in commercial real estate. His company headshot showed a man with the kind of aggressive confidence that probably worked well in sales. Square jaw, expensive suit, the smile of someone who'd never been told no. His social media presence was exactly what I'd expected. Gym photos, expensive restaurants, vacation shots from places I couldn't afford. The kind of lifestyle that would appeal to someone feeling trapped in suburban routine. By 2 a.m., I had a complete digital profile of my wife's lover and a growing collection of evidence about their relationship. But I still didn't understand Derek's motive for exposing himself. Men like him didn't develop consciences overnight. I was missing something important. The next morning, Vanessa was already gone when I came downstairs. A note on the counter said she had an early meeting and would be home late. Again. Eli was eating cereal at the kitchen table, still in his pajamas. "Mom left early," he said without looking up from his phone. I noticed. "You okay getting to school on your own?" "Yeah." "Dad?" He glanced up. "Is everything all right? You and Mom have been weird lately." "Smart kid. Too smart, maybe." "Just work stuff," I said. "Nothing for you to worry about." But he was already worrying. I could see it in his eyes, the same analytical expression I recognized in the mirror. He knew something was wrong, even if he couldn't name it yet. "I'll drive you to school today," I said. The drive gave me time to think. Derek's messages had stopped after the initial dump of information, but I kept checking my phone anyway. Part of me wanted more evidence, more ammunition for whatever confrontation was coming. But another part of me hoped this was all some elaborate misunderstanding. That hope lasted until I got to work and found Derek Lane sitting in my office parking lot. Derek Lane looked exactly like his photos, but smaller somehow. Maybe it was the way he sat hunched in his red BMW, or the nervous energy radiating through the windshield. He'd been waiting for me, and he wanted to talk. I parked 3 spaces away and walked over to his car. He rolled down the window, and I got my first good look at the man who'd been texting my wife about her hands. "You must be Miles," he said. "We need to talk." "I figured as much, considering you've been sending me screenshots of my wife's private conversations." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Look, I know how this appears, but I need you to understand something. I thought you two were separated. She told me you were basically roommates, just staying together for your kid." And you believe that? Why wouldn't I? She seemed unhappy, said you'd grown apart, that you barely spoke anymore. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm not in the habit of pursuing married women. I leaned against his car door. But you are in the habit of sending evidence to their husbands? When I realized she'd been lying to me, yeah, I don't like being played any more than you do. There was something rehearsed about his explanation, like he'd practiced this conversation, but there was also genuine frustration in his voice. Maybe he really had been manipulated. How long? I asked. 3 months. We met at a networking event. She was charming, funny, said she was thinking about leaving her husband but needed to wait for the right time. The right time being after your promotion comes through? His expression shifted. You saw that message. I saw several messages, including the ones where she talks about my work schedule and when I'll be out of town. Derek closed his eyes. I never asked her to track your schedule. That was all her idea. But you didn't stop her. No, I didn't stop her. We stood in silence for a moment. Other employees were arriving, parking around us, heading into the building. Normal people starting normal days, unaware that my life was disintegrating in a parking lot conversation. What do you want from me? I asked. I want to end this cleanly. No drama, no public scenes. I'll break it off with Vanessa. You two can work out whatever you need to work out, and we can all move on. That's very civilized of you. I'm trying to do the right thing here. The right thing would have been not sleeping with my wife in the first place. Derek's jaw tightened. You're right, but I can't undo that now. I can only try to minimize the damage going forward. I studied his face, looking for tells. In my line of work, you learn to read people's intentions through their digital behavior. Online, Derek Lane was all confidence and bravado. In person, he seemed genuinely remorseful. But something still felt off about his sudden attack of conscience. Why now? I asked. What changed? I found out she'd been lying about other things. Small stuff at first, but it added up. Made me wonder what else she wasn't telling me. Such as? She said you never took her anywhere, that you'd become boring and predictable. But then I saw photos on her social media from that weekend in Boston last month. You two looked happy. I remembered that weekend. Vanessa had seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly, but I'd attributed it to work stress. We'd walked the Freedom Trail, had dinner in the North End, spent Sunday morning in bed reading the newspaper. It had felt like the old days, before parenthood and mortgages and the slow erosion of daily routine. She was probably texting you the whole time, I said. Yeah, she was. Derek started his car. I'm going to end it today. Clean break. You should probably prepare for some fallout at home. What kind of fallout? She's not going to take rejection well, and she's definitely not going to appreciate that I told you about the affair. He drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with more questions than answers. Derek Lane was either the most considerate adulterer in history, or he was playing a much deeper game than I understood. I spent the morning trying to focus on work, but my mind kept circling back to the conversation. Something about Derek's story didn't add up. If he'd really developed feelings for Vanessa, why would he sabotage the relationship by telling me about it? And if he was just looking for a guilt-free exit, why involve me at all? He could have simply stopped responding to her messages, unless he wanted me to confront Vanessa, unless this was all part of some larger manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Working late again tonight, don't wait up. I stared at the message, wondering if she was actually working or if she didn't know yet that Derek was planning to end things. Either way, she was still lying to me. I forwarded the text to Derek with a simple message. Thought you should know. His response came back immediately. Already told her it's over. She's not handling it well. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Vanessa. Miles, can you talk? Her voice sounded strained, like she'd been crying. I'm at work, but sure. What's wrong? I need to tell you something. Can you come home? Is it an emergency? It's important, please. I told my boss I had a family situation and drove home, my mind racing through possible scenarios. Maybe Derek had been telling the truth about ending the affair. Maybe Vanessa was finally ready to confess. Or maybe this was all part of some elaborate setup I still didn't understand. I found her sitting at our kitchen table, the same spot where Eli had eaten breakfast that morning. She'd been crying, her makeup was smeared, and she was clutching a tissue. I need to tell you something, she said without looking up. I'm listening. I've made some mistakes. Big mistakes. I sat down across from her, waiting. I've been seeing someone else. The words hung in the air between us. This was the moment I was supposed to act surprised, hurt, betrayed. Instead, I felt oddly calm. Who? His name is Derek. We met at a work function. It just happened. How long? 3 months. She finally looked at me. I'm sorry, Miles. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. Yes. And now you want to what? Work things out? Go to counseling? She shook her head. I want a divorce. There it was, the real reason for the confession. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for an exit. Is that what Derek wants too? Her expression shifted. How do you know his name? You just told me his name. No, I mean... Never mind. She wiped her eyes. This isn't about Derek. This is about us. We've been growing apart for years, Miles. We both know it. Do we? Don't make this harder than it has to be. We can do this amicably, for Eli's sake. I leaned back in my chair, studying my wife's face. She was trying to control the narrative, to make this seem like a mutual decision, rather than the result of her affair. It was a classic HR move. Reframe the problem to minimize liability. What about the house? I asked. We'll figure it out. Maybe one of us can buy out the other, or we can sell and split the proceeds. And Eli? Joint custody. We'll work out a schedule that's fair for everyone. She had it all planned out. The confession, the divorce, the division of assets. This wasn't a moment of emotional breakdown. It was a business presentation. When do you want to tell Eli? I asked. Soon. But we should figure out the details first, so we can present a united front. A united front, right. Vanessa reached across the table and touched my hand. I know I've hurt you, Miles. I know this isn't what either of us planned when we got married, but maybe this is our chance to both find something better. I looked down at her hand on mine, the same hand that had been texting Derek Lane for 3 months, the same hand that had been lying to both of us. There's just one thing I don't understand, I said. What's that? Why Derek decided to end it today. Her hand went still. What do you mean? He came to see me this morning, said he was breaking up with you because he found out you'd been lying to him about our marriage. Vanessa pulled her hand back. He came to see you? Sat in my office parking lot for an hour, waiting for me to arrive. Very considerate of him, actually. Most men don't personally apologize to the husbands of the women they're sleeping with. I don't understand. Derek wouldn't do that. Wouldn't do what? Tell the truth? Take responsibility for his actions? He promised me he would never contact you directly. Well, he broke that promise. Just like you broke your wedding vows. Vanessa's face was pale now. What exactly did he tell you? Everything. The networking event where you met. The lies you told him about our marriage. The way you tracked my schedule so you could plan your meetings. That's not... He showed me the messages, Vanessa. Screenshots of your conversations with Mara about how to handle the situation. I know about all of it. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. He showed you our private messages? He felt guilty. Apparently he has more of a conscience than either of us gave him credit for. Vanessa stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. This is insane. Derek wouldn't betray me like that. The same way you wouldn't betray me? She spun around. That's different, and you know it. How is it different? Because you and I… She struggled to find the words. We haven't been happy for a long time, Miles. We've been going through the motions, staying together out of habit. Is that what you told Derek? I told him the truth. Which version of the truth? The one where we're separated, or the one where we're unhappily married, or the one where we're roommates staying together for our son? Her face flushed. How do you know what I told him? Because he told me. Everything you said, every lie you constructed to make yourself feel better about the affair. Vanessa sank back into her chair. I can't believe he would do this to me. Do what? Tell the truth? Humiliate me. Expose our private conversations. I almost laughed. You're upset about being humiliated? Of course I'm upset. How could he betray my trust like that? Your trust. Right. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, a neighbor was mowing his lawn, the sound of the engine mixing with the distant hum of traffic. Normal suburban sounds for a day that had become anything but normal. So what happens now? Vanessa asked. Now you tell me the rest of it. The rest of what? Whatever you're not telling me about Derek, because his story doesn't make sense, and your reaction to finding out he contacted me suggests there's more going on here than a simple affair. Vanessa looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in her expression. The mask of contrition slipped, replaced by something harder. You want to know the rest of it? She said. Fine. Derek didn't end the affair because he felt guilty. He ended it because he got what he wanted. Which was what? Information. About your work, your clients, your security protocols. He's been pumping me for details about your job for weeks. The room seemed to tilt slightly. What kind of details? Client lists, project timelines, access codes. She met my eyes. Derek's company is bidding on the same contracts your company is pursuing. He wanted inside information. And you gave it to him. I thought if I helped him land a big contract, he'd be in a better position to support me after the divorce. I stared at my wife, trying to process what she'd just told me. The affair hadn't just been about romance or escape or midlife crisis. It had been industrial espionage, with my marriage as collateral damage. How much did you tell him? Enough, she said quietly. Enough for what? Enough for his company to underbid yours on the Morrison account. The Morrison account, 6 months of work, a $250,000 contract that would have secured my job for the next 2 years. We'd lost the bid 3 weeks ago, and I'd been wondering how our competitor had managed to come in so far under our estimate. Now I knew. You sold out my career for a man who was using you. I didn't know he was using me. I thought he cared about me. And when did you figure out the truth? This morning, when he told me he was ending things. Her voice was barely a whisper. He said he'd gotten what he needed, and it was time to move on. So you came home to confess and ask for a divorce. I came home because I didn't know what else to do. I stood up, needing to move, to think. The affair was bad enough, but this was something else entirely. This was betrayal on multiple levels, with consequences that extended far beyond our marriage. Does Derek know that you know? Know what? That he was using you for information. Vanessa shook her head. I don't think so. I didn't confront him about it. I was too shocked. Good. Don't tell him. Why? I looked at my wife, this woman I'd shared a life with for 15 years, who had just admitted to destroying my career for a man who'd manipulated her into industrial espionage. Because I'm going to need you to help me get it back. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. Vanessa had spent the night in the guest room, claiming she needed space to think. Fine by me. I needed space to work. While she slept, I'd spent hours at my computer, mapping out the full scope of Derek's deception. The man was more sophisticated than I'd given him credit for. This wasn't just about stealing a contract. It was about dismantling my professional reputation piece by piece. Over the past 3 months, Derek had used Vanessa to gather intelligence on 5 separate projects: client preferences, budget constraints, technical specifications, timeline requirements. Information that should have been confidential had been flowing directly to our biggest competitor. But Derek had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated both my analytical skills and my capacity for revenge. I was making coffee when Vanessa came downstairs, still in her robe, looking like she hadn't slept much either. "We need to talk about what happens next," she said. "I've been thinking about that." And I think Derek deserves to know how much you appreciate his honesty." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean you're going to call him and tell him you want to meet. One last time, to say goodbye properly." "Miles, I can't. After what he did to me." "After what he did to us," I corrected. "And yes, you can. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure everyone at your company knows exactly how you've been sharing confidential information with competitors." Vanessa's face went white. "You wouldn't. Try me. That would destroy my career." "The same way you destroyed mine?" She sank into a chair at the kitchen table. "What do you want me to do?" "Exactly what I tell you to do, starting with that phone call." I handed her my phone with Derek's number already dialed. "What am I supposed to say?" "Tell him you've been thinking about everything and you realize he was right to end things. Tell him you want to meet for coffee to discuss it like adults." "He's not going to believe that." "He'll believe it because it's what he wants to hear. Men like Derek always think they're irresistible. He'll assume you're trying to win him back." Vanessa took the phone with shaking hands and made the call. Derek answered on the second ring. "Vanessa, I thought we agreed." "I know what we agreed," she said, following my script. "But I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, and I think you were right. We should end this properly, like adults." There was a pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'd like to meet for coffee. Just to talk, to get some closure. I think we both deserve that." Another pause, longer this time. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, Derek, just one conversation. Then I promise I'll leave you alone." "Where?" "The Starbucks on Main Street. This afternoon at 3? "Fine. But this is really the end, Vanessa. After today, no more contact." "I understand." She hung up and looked at me. "Now what?" "Now you go to that meeting and record every word he says." "Record it? Why?" "Because Derek Lane is about to confess to industrial espionage and we're going to need evidence." The plan was simple in concept, complex in execution. Derek had used Vanessa to steal information from my company, but he'd also created a paper trail in the process. His company's winning bid on the Morrison account was suspiciously detailed, incorporating technical specifications that weren't part of the public request for proposals. Specifications that I'd shared with Vanessa during casual dinner conversations about my work. If I could get Derek to admit he'd used that information, I'd have grounds for a lawsuit that would destroy his career and potentially recover damages for my company. But I needed proof, a recording, a confession, something that would hold up in court. "I can't do this," Vanessa said. "I can't manipulate him like this." "You've been manipulating him for 3 months, and he's been manipulating you. This is just changing the direction of the manipulation. It feels wrong. As opposed to corporate espionage, which feels right." She didn't answer. "Look," I said, softening my tone slightly. "Derek used both of us. He seduced you to get information, then discarded you when he got what he needed. Don't you want to make him pay for that? I want this whole situation to go away." "It's not going away. The damage is done. The only question now is whether we're going to let Derek profit from it or whether we're going to fight back." Vanessa stared into her coffee cup. "What if he doesn't confess? What if he's smarter than you think? Then we'll try something else. But I don't think Derek is as smart as he believes he is. Men like him always overestimate their own cleverness. And what about us? What about our marriage? I looked at my wife, this woman who'd betrayed me in ways I was still discovering, and felt something cold settle in my chest. There is no us anymore, Vanessa. There's just damage control. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. But if you help me get Derek, I'll make sure the divorce is clean. No contested custody, no fighting over assets. We'll split everything 50-50 and move on with our lives. And if I don't help you, then I'll make sure everyone knows exactly how Derek got his information. Your career will be over and you'll be lucky if you don't face criminal charges. It wasn't a negotiation. It was an ultimatum. But Vanessa had forfeited the right to negotiate when she'd started sharing my work secrets with her lover. Fine, she said. I'll do it. That afternoon, I sat in my car across the street from the Starbucks, watching through the window as Vanessa and Derek met for what he thought would be their final conversation. She was wearing a wire, a small digital recorder I'd borrowed from work, taped to her chest and connected to a tiny microphone hidden in her collar. Derek arrived first, looking uncomfortable but trying to project confidence. He chose a table in the back corner, away from other customers. Good. That would make the recording clearer. Vanessa arrived 10 minutes later, playing her role perfectly. She looked nervous, vulnerable, like a woman trying to salvage something from a relationship that had already ended. Derek's body language softened when he saw her, his guard dropping slightly. I couldn't hear their conversation from the car, but I could see their faces, their gestures. Vanessa was following the script we'd rehearsed, steering the conversation toward Derek's work, his recent successes, the contracts he'd won. 20 minutes into their meeting, Derek's phone rang. He answered it, spoke briefly, then hung up with a satisfied smile. He said something to Vanessa that made her lean forward, interested. This was it, the opening we'd been waiting for. Derek was bragging about his business acumen, his strategic thinking, his ability to outmaneuver competitors. And if our plan was working, he was also explaining exactly how he'd managed to underbid my company on several major contracts. The conversation lasted another 15 minutes. When it ended, Derek stood first, said something that looked like a final goodbye, and walked away without looking back. Vanessa sat alone at the table for several minutes, then gathered her things and left. She was quiet during the drive home, staring out the passenger window. How did it go? I asked. He confessed. To all of it. Everything? He's proud of himself, Miles. He thinks he's some kind of business genius for figuring out how to use me to get inside information. What exactly did he say? That seducing the wives of competitors was a legitimate business strategy. That information wants to be free, and if people were careless enough to share secrets with their spouses, that was their own fault. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Derek had just handed us everything we needed to destroy him. Did he mention specific contracts? Morrison, Patterson, the Riverside Development Project. He walked through each one, explaining how the information I gave him helped his company win the bids. And you got it all on tape? Vanessa nodded. Every word. When we got home, I transferred the recording to my computer and listened to the entire conversation. Derek had been even more careless than I'd hoped. Not only had he confessed to using insider information, he'd also detailed his company's bidding strategy for future contracts and made several disparaging comments about my company's leadership. It was enough to end his career and possibly land him in prison. But I wasn't ready to play that card yet. Derek Lane had spent 3 months systematically destroying my professional life while sleeping with my wife. A simple lawsuit seemed insufficient revenge for that level of betrayal. I wanted him to suffer the way I'd suffered. I wanted him to feel helpless, manipulated, stripped of control over his own narrative. I wanted him to know what it felt like to be played. What happens now? Vanessa asked. Now we wait. For what? For Derek to make his next mistake. That evening, I sat in my home office, surrounded by printouts of Derek's confession, financial records from his company, and a growing file of evidence that would eventually destroy him. But timing was everything. If I moved too quickly, Derek might find a way to minimize the damage or shift the blame to Vanessa. I needed him to feel secure, confident that he'd gotten away with his scheme. I needed him to get careless. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Heard you had an interesting conversation with Derek Lane yesterday. We should meet. I stared at the message, trying to figure out who could have sent it. Someone who knew about Derek's confession, someone who had their own interest in seeing him brought down. I typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. Someone who's been waiting a long time for Derek to make a mistake this big. Another player had entered the game. Someone with their own agenda, their own score to settle with Derek Lane. Things were about to get much more complicated. The mysterious texter turned out to be Amanda Pierce, Derek's ex-wife. We met the next morning at a diner 20 minutes outside of town, neutral territory where neither of us was likely to run into anyone we knew. Amanda was 43, professionally dressed, with the kind of sharp intelligence that probably made Derek nervous during their divorce proceedings. "I've been watching Derek's business practices for 2 years," she said, without preamble, waiting for him to cross a line I could use against him. "Why?" "Because he owes me $300,000 in unpaid alimony, and his lawyers have been very creative about hiding his assets." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were financial documents, business records, and what looked like surveillance photos of Derek with various women. "Your wife isn't his first target," Amanda said. "Derek has been using this strategy for years. Seduce women with access to inside information, pump them for details about their companies or their husbands' businesses, then disappear when he gets what he needs." I flipped through the photos. Derek with a blonde woman outside a law office. Derek with a brunette at what looked like a construction site. Derek with a redhead at an upscale restaurant. How many? That I can prove? 7 in the past 2 years? That I suspect? Probably twice that number. And none of them ever reported him? For what? Seduction isn't illegal, and most of them didn't realize they were being used until it was too late. Amanda pulled out another document, a detailed timeline of Derek's business successes correlated with his romantic relationships. Every major contract his company has won in the past 3 years corresponds to a period when Derek was involved with a woman who had access to relevant inside information. He's not just a cheater, he's a professional con artist. Why are you telling me this? Because you have something I need. Proof that Derek used insider information to win contracts. Admissible evidence that I can use to demonstrate a pattern of fraudulent business practices. And in exchange, I help you destroy him completely. Amanda's plan was more comprehensive than anything I'd conceived. She'd been building a case against Derek for months, documenting his affairs, tracking his business dealings, preparing for the moment when she'd have enough evidence to take him down. "The recording you have is good," she said, "but it's not enough by itself. Derek's lawyers will claim it was taken without his consent, that it's inadmissible, that he was just bragging to impress a woman. So what do we need? We need corroborating evidence, documentation from his company showing how they use the information, testimony from other victims, financial records proving he profited from insider information." "And you have all that?" "Most of it. What I don't have is a smoking gun, clear evidence of Derek explicitly trading romantic relationships for business intelligence. The recording gives you that. The recording gives me part of it. But I need more. I need Derek to admit his pattern of behavior, not just his relationship with your wife." Amanda had a proposal. She wanted me to help her set up Derek for a much bigger fall, one that would expose his entire operation and potentially send him to prison. What did you have in mind? Derek thinks he's untouchable because he's careful about keeping his romantic and business lives separate. But he's gotten arrogant. he's starting to take bigger risks. She showed me a business card. Pinnacle Solutions was bidding on a massive government contract, something that would triple their annual revenue. If Derek is following his usual pattern, he's already identified women with access to inside information about this contract. We find those women, warn them about Derek's game, and turn them into assets instead of victims. You want to run a counterintelligence operation. I want to give Derek exactly what he thinks he wants, then use it to hang him. The plan was ambitious, risky, and probably illegal. It was also exactly the kind of comprehensive revenge that Derek's crimes deserved. I'm in, I said. Over the next week, Amanda and I worked together to identify Derek's potential targets for the government contract. 3 women emerged as likely candidates: a project manager at the contracting agency, a lawyer at the firm handling the legal review, and an accountant at the company responsible for budget oversight. Amanda approached each woman directly, explaining Derek's pattern of behavior and asking for their help in documenting his attempts at manipulation. 2 of them were immediately interested. Apparently, Derek had already made contact, and they'd found his approach suspicious. The 3rd woman, the project manager, revealed that Derek had asked her out twice in the past month, each time steering their conversations toward her work on the government contract. I thought he was just making conversation, she said, but now that you mention it, he was very interested in details that most people would find boring. We equipped all 3 women with recording devices and coached them on how to encourage Derek to reveal his true intentions. Within days, we had hours of audio evidence showing Derek systematically attempting to extract confidential information from government employees. But the real breakthrough came when Derek made a critical error. Confident that his latest scheme was working, Derek got careless during a phone conversation with one of his business partners. The project manager was wearing a wire when Derek called her, ostensibly to ask her out for dinner, but Derek's partner was in the room, and their conversation was clearly audible in the background. "The Pierce woman is getting suspicious," Derek's partner said. "Maybe we should back off the government contract." "Amanda doesn't have anything solid," Derek replied. "And even if she did, what's she going to do? Report me for dating? What about the Harren situation? That could blow back on us. Harren's wife was a gold mine. We got enough information from her to lock up 3 major contracts. Even if he figures out what happened, what's he going to do? Sue us for seducing his wife?" Derek laughed, and the sound made my stomach turn. "Besides," he continued, "Vanessa Harren is so desperate for validation that she'd probably thank me for the attention even now." The project manager, to her credit, kept Derek on the phone for another 10 minutes, encouraging him to brag about his various schemes. By the time the call ended, we had everything we needed to destroy Derek's business, his reputation, and quite possibly his freedom. Amanda and I spent that evening preparing our evidence package. Financial records showing Derek's company had profited from insider information. Audio recordings of Derek confessing to multiple instances of corporate espionage. Testimony from 7 different women describing Derek's pattern of manipulation. "When do we move?" I asked. "Tomorrow. I've scheduled a meeting with the district attorney's office for 10 a.m. By noon, Derek will be under investigation for wire fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. What about the civil suits? I'm filing for damages against Derek's company first thing in the morning. Your company should do the same. Between the criminal charges and the civil liability, Pinnacle Solutions will be finished within 6 months." I should have felt satisfied. Derek was about to lose everything: his business, his reputation, his freedom. It was comprehensive, devastating revenge. But it wasn't personal enough. "I want to confront him first," I said. "That's not a good idea. If Derek knows we're coming, he might try to destroy evidence or flee." "He's not going to flee. He's too arrogant to believe he can really be touched." Amanda considered this. "What did you have in mind?" "I want him to know that I beat him, that the man whose wife he seduced and whose career he tried to destroy was smart enough to turn the tables." "And how do you propose to do that?" I smiled. The same way he did it to me, through his romantic relationships. Derek was currently pursuing a marketing executive named Jennifer Walsh, a woman Amanda had identified as his likely next target. Jennifer was already working with us, recording Derek's attempts to extract information about her company's upcoming merger. But Derek didn't know that Jennifer was working with us. "I want to arrange a meeting," I said. "Derek, Jennifer, Vanessa, and me. Let Derek think he's walking into a confrontation about the affair, then reveal that we know everything about his business operations." "That's risky. Derek might become violent if he feels cornered." "Derek's not violent. He's a manipulator, not a fighter. When cornered, he'll try to talk his way out of trouble, which means he'll probably confess to even more crimes." Amanda was quiet for a long moment. "Where would you hold this meeting?" "Somewhere public but private. Somewhere Derek would feel comfortable, but where we'd have witnesses if things went wrong." "The country club where Derek plays golf?" "Perfect." The next morning, I called Derek and arranged to meet him at the Riverside Country Club for lunch. I told him Vanessa wanted to apologize for the way things had ended, and that I wanted to discuss the situation like adults. Derek, predictably, agreed immediately. He probably thought he was walking into an opportunity to gloat about his conquest. He had no idea he was walking into his own destruction. Derek arrived at the country club 15 minutes early, dressed in his usual expensive suit and radiating the kind of confidence that comes from never having faced real consequences for bad behavior. He'd chosen a corner table in the club's dining room, positioning himself with his back to the wall where he could see everyone who entered. Smart, but not smart enough. I arrived precisely on time, alone. Derek stood to shake my hand, his grip firm and his smile practiced. "Miles, I appreciate you reaching out. I know this situation has been difficult for everyone involved." "Difficult. That's one word for it." We sat down, and Derek immediately launched into what was clearly a prepared speech about mature adults handling complex situations with dignity and respect. He was good. I had to give him that. His tone was sincere, his body language open and apologetic. If I hadn't known what I knew, I might have actually believed he felt remorseful about the affair. "Where's Vanessa?" he asked after finishing his opening remarks. "She'll be here. She's just running a few minutes late." "And you're okay with this meeting?" I know it can't be easy, sitting across from the man who... "Who what, Derek?" "Who complicated your marriage." Complicated. Another interesting word choice. Derek's smile flickered slightly. "I'm trying to be diplomatic here, Miles. We both know this situation is awkward. Awkward doesn't begin to cover it." Before Derek could respond, Jennifer Walsh entered the dining room. She was an attractive woman in her 30s, professionally dressed, with the kind of confident bearing that would appeal to someone like Derek. She approached our table with a slight smile. "Derek, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was hoping we could talk." Derek's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, confusion, and then a dawning wariness. "Jennifer, what are you doing here?" "Miles invited me. He thought it would be good for us all to have a conversation." Derek looked back and forth between Jennifer and me. "I don't understand." "I think you do," I said. "But let's wait for everyone to arrive before we start the real discussion." Vanessa appeared in the doorway looking nervous but determined. She'd dressed carefully for this meeting, conservative business attire that made her look professional rather than romantic. She joined us at the table, nodding politely to Derek but not making eye contact. "Now we can begin," I said. Derek was trying to maintain his composure, but I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. He was starting to realize this wasn't the meeting he'd expected. "Begin what, exactly?" "The conversation about your business practices." "My business practices?" "Your habit of seducing women to extract confidential information about their companies or their husband's work." Derek's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You've been running this scam for years. Identify women with access to valuable information, seduce them, pump them for details, then disappear when you get what you need. That's ridiculous. Jennifer leaned forward. Is it? Because you've spent the last 3 weeks trying to get information about my company's merger plans. We were just making conversation. Conversation that you recorded, Derek. Conversation that you shared with your business partners. Derek's eyes darted around the room, looking for exits, looking for options. You're both crazy if you think anyone will believe this. We don't need anyone to believe it, I said. We have proof. I pulled out my phone and played a snippet of Derek's recorded conversation with his business partner, the one where he bragged about using Vanessa to extract information about my company's contracts. Derek listened to his own voice with growing horror. That recording is illegal. You can't use it. Actually, we can. Vanessa consented to being recorded, and you were speaking loudly enough in a public place that there was no expectation of privacy. Besides, Jennifer added, it's not the only recording we have. She pulled out her own phone and played Derek's voice asking detailed questions about her company's financial projections, questions that had nothing to do with casual dating conversation. You set me up, Derek said, looking at Jennifer, the same way you set up dozens of other women. Derek turned to Vanessa. You were in on this? I was trying to fix what I broke, Vanessa said quietly. When I realized you'd been using me, I wanted to make it right. Using you? I cared about you. No, you didn't. You cared about the information I could provide. Derek's mask was slipping now. The smooth confidence was giving way to something uglier, anger, desperation, and a kind of petulant entitlement. You people have no idea what you're dealing with, he said. I have lawyers, resources, connections. You think you can destroy me with some amateur recording operation? We're not trying to destroy you, Derek, I said. You destroyed yourself. We're just documenting the damage. What do you want? Money? I can make this go away. It's too late for that. Amanda Pierce chose that moment to make her entrance. She approached our table with the satisfied smile of someone who'd been waiting years for this moment. Hello, Derek. Derek's face went white. Amanda, what are you doing here? Watching you dig your own grave. She sat down at our table without being invited, completing the circle around Derek. You see, Derek, while you were busy seducing other men's wives, I was busy building a case against you. Financial records, business documents, testimony from your victims. Victims? That's dramatic, even for you. 7 women in 2 years, Derek. 7 women you manipulated for business intelligence. The district attorney is very interested in your pattern of behavior. Derek looked around the table at the faces surrounding him. His ex-wife, his latest victim, his victim's husband, and his intended next victim, all aligned against him. This is entrapment. No, I said. This is consequences. Derek stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Actually, you do, Amanda said. Because if you leave now, the next conversation you have will be with federal investigators. Derek sat back down. Here's what's going to happen, Amanda continued. You're going to confess to using insider information to win contracts. You're going to provide a complete list of your victims and the information you extracted from them. And you're going to cooperate fully with the investigation. And if I don't, then you'll go to prison for wire fraud, corporate espionage, and conspiracy. Your company will be dissolved, your assets will be seized, and your reputation will be destroyed. Derek was quiet for a long moment, processing his options. What do I get in exchange for cooperation? A recommendation for leniency, maybe 5 years instead of 15. 5 years? You committed federal crimes, Derek. Multiple federal crimes. You're lucky we're offering you anything at all. Derek looked at each of us in turn, his expression cycling through anger, fear, and finally resignation. I want immunity. Not happening. Reduced charges? Possible, depending on your level of cooperation. Derek closed his eyes. I need to call my lawyer. You can call your lawyer from the district attorney's office, Amanda said. We have an appointment in 30 minutes. You're arresting me? We're escorting you to a meeting where you can voluntarily surrender and begin cooperating with the investigation. Derek laughed bitterly. Voluntarily. It's your choice, Derek. Walk in on your own or get dragged in later. But either way, your business is finished. Derek looked at me. You think you've won something here? I think I've stopped you from hurting anyone else. Your marriage was already over, Miles. I just helped it along. Maybe, but at least now Vanessa knows what kind of man she was willing to throw away 15 years for. Derek turned to Vanessa. Do you really think he's going to forgive you for this? Do you think your marriage is suddenly going to be perfect because you helped destroy me? Vanessa met his gaze steadily. I don't expect forgiveness. I just expect to sleep better knowing you can't do this to anyone else. Derek's shoulders sagged. The fight had gone out of him. Fine, let's get this over with. As we prepared to leave the country club, Derek made one last attempt to regain control of the situation. You know this won't bring back your contracts, Miles. The damage to your career is already done. Maybe, but at least everyone will know why I lost those contracts, and they'll know that you cheated to win them. You think that matters? You think anyone cares about fairness in business? I think people care about trust, and after today, nobody will ever trust you again. Derek had no response to that. We walked out of the country club together, Derek, Amanda, Vanessa, Jennifer, and me. An unlikely group united by one man's greed and manipulation. In the parking lot, Derek turned to me one last time. I hope you realize your wife is never going to forgive herself for this. She's going to spend the rest of her life knowing she destroyed her marriage for a man who never cared about her. That's her burden to carry, I said. Just like prison is going to be yours. Derek got into Amanda's car for the ride to the district attorney's office. Vanessa, Jennifer, and I stood in the parking lot, watching them drive away. What happens now? Vanessa asked. Now Derek faces the consequences of his choices, and we all try to figure out how to move forward. I mean with us, with our marriage. I looked at my wife, this woman who had betrayed me and then helped me get revenge on the man who had used her betrayal. I felt many things, anger, disappointment, a kind of exhausted sadness, but I didn't feel forgiveness. I don't know, I said honestly. I really don't know. But I knew one thing for certain. Derek Lane would never hurt another family the way he'd hurt ours. And sometimes, that has to be enough. 3 months after Derek's arrest, I was sitting in my home office when the doorbell rang at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Through the peephole, I could see Derek Lane standing on my front porch. He looked different, thinner, older, with the kind of hollow-eyed exhaustion that comes from months of legal battles and public humiliation. His expensive suits had been replaced by jeans and a wrinkled button-down shirt. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by the hunched posture of a man who'd lost everything. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. Hello, Derek. Miles, we need to talk. I don't think we do. Please, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Vanessa and Eli were inside watching television, and I didn't want Derek's presence to contaminate our home any more than it already had. What do you want? I want you to know that I'm sorry. Okay, you're sorry, is that it? Derek ran a hand through his hair. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I never intended for things to go as far as they did. Which things? The affair, the corporate espionage, or the systematic manipulation of vulnerable women? All of it. I started down this path because I was angry after my divorce, and I wanted to prove I could still compete with younger, more successful men. But somewhere along the way, it became about more than business. It became about power. And now you've lost all your power. I've lost everything. My company, my reputation, my freedom. Derek's plea agreement had resulted in a 3-year prison sentence, suspended pending his cooperation with ongoing investigations. But that's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? Because I need you to know that Vanessa never meant to hurt you. She was genuinely unhappy in your marriage, and I took advantage of that unhappiness. You're defending my wife to me? I'm trying to tell you that she deserves better than what I put her through, and better than the way you've been treating her since. I stared at Derek, trying to process the surreal nature of this conversation. You think I'm being unfair to Vanessa? I think you're punishing her for my crimes. I'm holding her accountable for her choices. She chose to have an affair. She didn't choose to become an unwitting accomplice to corporate espionage. Derek was right about that, and we both knew it. Vanessa had been manipulated, used, and discarded. Her betrayal of our marriage was real, but her participation in Derek's business crimes had been largely unconscious. What do you want from me, Derek? I want you to forgive her. That's not your decision to make. No, it's not, but I'm the one who destroyed your marriage, and I'm the one who should pay the price for it. You are paying the price for it. Not enough? Not compared to what I cost both of you? Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This is a check for $200,000. It's everything I have left after legal fees and restitution payments. I didn't take the envelope. What's this for? Damages, pain and suffering, whatever you want to call it. Money won't fix what I broke, but maybe it'll help you and Vanessa start over. We're not starting over. We're getting divorced. Derek's face fell. Because of me. Because of a lot of things. The affair was just the final straw. But if I hadn't manipulated her, she still would have cheated. Maybe not with you, maybe not for business reasons, but eventually. Our marriage was broken long before you came along. Derek stood there holding the envelope, looking lost. Keep your money, I said. Use it to pay back the other people you hurt. Miles, Go home, Derek. Serve your sentence, rebuild your life, and leave my family alone. Derek nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I hope you and Vanessa can find a way to be happy. Both of you deserve better than what I put you through. He walked back to his car, a 10-year-old Honda that was a far cry from the red BMW he'd been driving when this all started, and drove away into the night. I stood on my porch for several minutes, processing the encounter. Derek's apology had seemed genuine, but it didn't change anything. The damage was done, the consequences were playing out, and all of us would have to live with the choices we'd made. When I went back inside, Vanessa was waiting in the kitchen. Was that Derek? Yes. What did he want? To apologize, and to give us money. Money for what? Damages, apparently. $200,000. Vanessa's eyes widened. Did you take it? No. Why not? Because I don't want his money. I don't want anything from him. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. He really destroyed his life, didn't he? He destroyed a lot of lives. His own, ours, the other women he manipulated. The fact that he's finally facing consequences doesn't make him a victim. I know. But seeing him like that, he looked broken. Good. Vanessa flinched at the coldness in my voice. Miles, I know you're angry with me, and you have every right to be. But Derek was right about one thing. I never meant to hurt you the way I did. But you did hurt me. Yes, I did. And you would have kept hurting me if Derek hadn't gotten careless. I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Vanessa sat down at the kitchen table. I was so unhappy, Miles. I felt invisible, unappreciated, taken for granted. When Derek paid attention to me, made me feel attractive and interesting, I convinced myself I deserved that feeling. You did deserve that feeling, from your husband. But you weren't giving it to me. And you never told me you needed it. We'd had this conversation before, in various forms, over the past 3 months. The marriage counseling sessions, the late-night arguments, the attempts to understand how we'd gotten to this point. It always came back to the same fundamental disconnect. We'd both been unhappy, but we'd dealt with that unhappiness in different ways. "I should have talked to you instead of looking outside our marriage," Vanessa said. "Yes, you should have. And you should have noticed that I was pulling away." "Yes, I should have." "So where does that leave us?" I looked at my wife, this woman I'd shared 15 years with, who had betrayed me and then helped me get revenge on the man who'd used her betrayal. I felt tired, empty, like I'd been running on adrenaline for months and was finally crashing. "I think it leaves us exactly where we've been for the past 3 months. Stuck." "The divorce papers are ready," Vanessa said quietly. "I know. We could sign them tomorrow, make it official." "We could. Or we could try again, really try this time with everything out in the open." I considered this. The practical part of my mind could see the logic in it. We had a son together, a shared history, a foundation that could potentially be rebuilt. The affair was over. Derek was facing justice, and we both understood our roles in the marriage's deterioration. But the emotional part of my mind couldn't get past the betrayal. Every time I looked at Vanessa, I saw the woman who had shared our private conversations with her lover, who had chosen another man over me, who had been willing to throw away 15 years for someone who was using her. "I don't think I can," I said. Vanessa nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I understand." "Do you?" "I think so. I broke something that can't be fixed. We both broke something, but I broke it worse." I couldn't argue with that. "What about Eli?" Vanessa asked. "We'll make it work. Joint custody, shared holidays, all the things divorced parents do to minimize the damage to their kids." "He's going to blame me." "Probably, for a while. I can live with that. I can't live with him blaming you for something I did." Vanessa stood up from the table. "I'll sign the papers tomorrow." "Vanessa?" She turned back to me. "For what it's worth, I hope Derek was wrong about you never forgiving yourself. You made a mistake, a big one, but you don't deserve to carry that guilt forever." "Thank you for saying that. And for what it's worth, I hope we can figure out how to be friends eventually, for Eli's sake and for ours." "I'd like that." She started to leave, then stopped. "Miles? Do you think we would have made it if Derek had never come along?" I thought about that question for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe we would have found a way to fix what was broken, or maybe we would have just kept drifting apart until one of us found the courage to end it. But we'll never know for sure. No, we'll never know for sure. Vanessa went upstairs to tell Eli that we'd made our decision about the divorce. I stayed in the kitchen, thinking about Derek's visit, about the choices that had brought us all to this point, about the uncertain future that lay ahead. My phone buzzed with a text message. Amanda Pierce, checking in as she'd been doing periodically since Derek's arrest. "How are you holding up?" "Signing divorce papers tomorrow," I typed back. "I'm sorry. I know that's not what you wanted. It's what needs to happen. Derek got what he deserved. That has to count for something." I thought about that. Derek Lane was facing prison time, financial ruin, and the complete destruction of his reputation. His company had been dissolved, his assets had been seized, and he would spend years paying restitution to his victims. Justice had been served in its way. But justice didn't restore my marriage, didn't undo the betrayal, didn't give me back the naive trust I'd had in my wife before I learned about the affair. "It counts for something," I replied to Amanda. "But not everything. Nothing ever counts for everything. That's the hardest lesson of all." I put my phone away and went upstairs to check on Eli. He was in his room, headphones on, lost in a video game. When he saw me in the doorway, he paused the game and pulled off his headphones. "Mom told me about the divorce. How do you feel about it?" "Sad, but not surprised." You know this isn't your fault, right? This is about problems between your mother and me, not about anything you did or didn't do. I know, Dad. I'm not a little kid. No, you're not. But you're still my kid, and I want to make sure you're okay. Eli was quiet for a moment. Are you okay? The question caught me off guard. In all the chaos of the past few months, nobody had asked me that simple question. I'm getting there, I said honestly. Good, because I need at least one parent who has their act together. I laughed, despite everything. I'll do my best. Dad, I'm glad you caught Derek. I'm glad he's going to prison. Why? Because he hurt our family, and people who hurt families should face consequences. Out of the mouths of babes. Yes, I said, they should. The next morning, Vanessa and I met with our lawyers and signed the divorce papers. It was a surprisingly mundane process for something that represented the end of 15 years of marriage. Signatures on documents, division of assets, custody arrangements for Eli. By noon, it was over. We stood outside the lawyer's office, no longer husband and wife, trying to figure out what to say to each other. So, Vanessa said. So? I guess this is it. I guess it is. Miles, thank you. For what? For not making this harder than it had to be. For not trying to destroy me the way we destroyed Derek. You're Eli's mother. And despite everything, you're not a bad person. You just made bad choices. We both made bad choices. Yeah, we did. Vanessa got in her car and drove away to start her new life. I got in my car and drove home to start mine. That evening, I was sitting on my front porch when my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, came over to chat. She was in her 70s, a widow who'd lived on our street for 30 years. I heard about your divorce, she said. I'm sorry. Thank you. And I heard about that man who was arrested, the one who was involved with Vanessa. News traveled fast in suburban neighborhoods. Yes, he's facing federal charges. Good. Men like that think they can take whatever they want without consequences. Mrs. Patterson sat down in the chair next to mine. You know, my husband had an affair once, about 20 years into our marriage. I looked at her in surprise. I didn't know that. Most people didn't. We kept it quiet, worked through it privately. How? Time, therapy, a lot of hard conversations, and eventually, forgiveness. Do you think we should have tried harder? Mrs. Patterson considered this. I think every situation is different. What worked for Harold and me might not have worked for you and Vanessa. But you don't think I should have given up? I think you should have done whatever felt right for you. And if divorce felt right, then it was the right choice. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over our quiet suburban street. Mrs. Patterson, do you think Derek will ever understand what he did wrong? Men like that rarely do. They see themselves as victims of circumstance rather than architects of their own downfall. That's what I figured. But it doesn't matter what he understands. What matters is that he can't hurt anyone else. And that has to be enough? Sometimes, Miles, that has to be enough. As Mrs. Patterson walked back to her house, I thought about Derek's visit the night before, about his apology and his offer of money, about his claim that he'd never intended for things to go as far as they did. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe he really had started down this path for understandable reasons and lost control somewhere along the way. But intentions don't erase consequences. Derek had destroyed multiple marriages, manipulated vulnerable women, and committed serious crimes. His remorse, however genuine, didn't undo the damage he'd caused. Justice had been served. Derek was facing prison time, financial ruin, and social disgrace. My marriage was over, but my son was safe, my career was recovering, and I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. It wasn't the ending I would have chosen, but it was an ending I could live with. And sometimes, that has to be enough. The last laugh, it turned out, belonged to all of us who'd survived Derek Lane's manipulation and found ways to rebuild our lives from the wreckage he'd left behind. That was victory enough.